Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. It is now 6 o'clock on Tuesday, November the 1st. I'd like to welcome you all to Richland County Council's regular session. This meeting will now come to order. Madam Clerk, take the roll, please.
Malinowski.
Here.
You.
Here.
McBride.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Teratio.
Here.
Joe Walker.
Here.
Barron.
Here.
O'Walker.
Here.
Mackey. English.
Present.
Newton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Madam Clerk, I guess let the record reflect that Ms. Mackey is in the building, but she'll be with us momentarily. And I believe there is the Madam Vice Chair.
Mackey.
Here.
We have a full quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is item 2, the invocation. That will be provided by the Honorable Cheryl English. Ms. English, you're recognized.
Let us go before. Holy and gracious Father, we come in the matchless name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We rejoice in this day, Lord, because who but you has the power to create a day. We thank you for your steadfast love and your mercy. God, we ask you to be with us as we conduct county business. Grant us the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, and the revelation to carry out the functions that are set before us. Father, as we desire to make Richland County our home, one of the best places to live, love, laugh, learn, and grow, God, we just ask that you're with us as we set policy. We are grateful, Lord, for the many staff members who work so diligently alongside us to prepare and make sound decisions. So we thank you for them, Lord, and everyone on this council. We thank you, Lord, that your love is poured out on us, for your unmerited favor, for your grace, and your saving mercies. God, as we abide under the shadow of the Almighty, we thank you for your protection and for keeping us. Father, these and all blessings we ask and thanks we give in the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Councilman English, for that move in prayer. And I believe Councilman Malinowski would like to be recognized. So you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like to take a moment and acknowledge our attorney, Patrick Wright. This is the anniversary of his first year working with Richland County. And while, like with us as elected officials, not everybody likes everything you do, but we thank you for your service. Thank you.
Right. And by the way, Councilman Malinowski speaks for the entire council when he says thank you for your service. Next item on the agenda is item 4, approval of the minutes. Item 4A, that's the regular session for October 18th, 2022. Any changes, additions, or deletions?
Approve, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
All right, you recognize Ms. Mackey?
Thank you. I just wanted to note on the record, did you see in the minutes for this meeting that I did recuse myself from a few items, but my written recusal was not included in our packet, but that has since been provided to all council members. And so I just wanted to make sure that was noted The clerk will be uploading that written recusal when the final minutes are posted to the website.
Vice Chair. There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
O'Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 4B, approval of the minutes from the zoning public hearing from October 25th, 2022. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions? All right,
So
then,
move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski, Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
O'Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 4C, approval of the minutes from the special call meeting for October 25th, 2022. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions? There being none, Madam Clerk, I'm sorry. I entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All right, move to properly second. Any discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski, Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
O'Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 5, adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Recognize Mr. Brown.
Staff would like to request item 15A, which I'm showing to be under the report of administration and finance as the Department of Public Works, solid waste and recycling articulated dump truck. We will request that you remove that item from this particular agenda until we can get the backup information that we're still waiting on answers for. Item 15A under the report of administration and finance committee.
Additions, additional changes or changes to the agenda? There being none, I entertain a motion
So
to
moved by
adopt the
approval.
agenda as amended.
Okay.
It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
O'Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English, Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 6, report of the attorney for executive session items. It appears that there are no items for executive session this evening. Is that correct, Mr. Wright?
That is correct, Mr.
All
Chair.
right. Next item on the agenda is item 7, citizens input. This is for items on the agenda not requiring a public hearing. Madam Vice Chair, anyone signed up to speak?
No, Mr. Chair, no individual signed up to speak this evening.
Next item on the agenda is item 8, which is citizens input. This is pertain to Richland County matters not on the agenda. Items for which a public hearing is required or a public hearing has been scheduled cannot be addressed at this time. Madam Vice Chair, anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one individual that's signed up to speak this evening. That individual is Gwendolyn Boykin. Boykin, if you would, state your first and last name. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. And also, I'm sorry, provide your address as well. And then at the conclusion of your 2 minutes, you'll hear an alarm and that'll end your time. All right. Come a little closer to the mic. Make sure we can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Gwendolyn L. Boykin. I reside at 3704 Judy Street, Columbia, South Carolina, zip 29223. And I am here to state what I'm here for. It's been over 6 years. I've been promised a new rebuilt home because I have a lot of problems in my home and it has caused some health issues from the agency flood recovery. And I really need a home real badly. And I want y'all to address that and do that. I have so many problems that's in my home. And please, please finance me a new rebuilt home. Even it's such with the monies, even if you add on repairs, whatever, I'll be appreciative. God bless you all. I really need this. And I've been promised, top of the list that you're going to get it, but I haven't received it as yet. So that's why I'm here to ask y'all to please help me get this new rebuilt home. Thank you so much. And I love Richland County.
Thank you so
God
much.
bless you all.
Thank you.
And I'm not working anymore.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the individuals that have signed up to speak this evening.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Next item on the agenda is item 9, the report of the county administrator. Mr. Brown, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but I don't have any updates for this evening.
Okay. Item on the agenda is item 10, report of the clerk of council. Madam Clerk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. I just wanted to remind the council that we have the Strategic Planning Forum, better known as our council retreat, scheduled for January the 25th to the 27th, 2023. So I will ask all of the council members to please mark your calendar for January 25th to the 27th for the Strategic Planning Forum. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is item 11. That's the report of the chair, and the chair does not have any updates or announcements to provide the body this evening. Next item on the agenda is item 12, which is open, closed public hearings. The first item is item 12A, an ordinance amending the Richland County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, County Council, Section 2-14, compensation of council members so as to reflect the new annual salary for county council. That public hearing is now open. Madam Vice Chair, anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have 2 individuals that have signed up to speak this evening. The first is Elaine Cooper. Ms. Cooper, if you would, state your first and last name, your address, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Cooper, 3105 Dallas, Columbia 29204. Okay. I tried to get a whole lot of people out to talk, but they're busy schedules and working several different jobs in this time of hard economics. When the gas prices are so much, we're facing such high inflation and groceries are so high. So several of my retired friends had to go back to work to really be able to afford their groceries, medicine, etc. So how can council members cost the taxpayers $286,000? How can some council members in this time of inflation and high gas prices and high grocery costs, where's their moral compass? I say to council members, those who voted for a raise, step down, resign, step down, resign. Some other person of moral character who's driven by their moral compass will take your place. Step down and resign. How can you look in someone's eyes who has worked full time and be paid as much as them when they're working full time, when you only show up a couple times a month? I'm a retired state employee who's worked 30 years and retired. How can you look? I never asked for a raise like this in all the 30 years I worked at a public broadcast station, and you are public servants. Where is your moral compass? Step down and resign. Let the person who opposed you in the election take that seat. We can find some others. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next individual is, and I apologize because I'm trying to read the writing, Mustafa Abdullah. You would state your first and last name for the record as well as your address, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Abdullah Mustafa. Address is 2101 Riding Ridge Road, Columbia, South Carolina. And I approve Elaine's statement. Sunday past, I was with a group of elders, the Sierra Club, going around to all the waste landfills here, okay, as well as the chemical plants that's been affecting poor people's health. Not only that has been affecting poor people's health, but this chemical, the waste, when you go out there to the landfill, soon you get there, you smell. If we want to vote for something, let's key in on the health issues here that constituents looking towards you guys to resolve. In the area of education, if we want to vote for something, look at Richland 1 and Richland 2. Our children are graduating, can't even read and write. Cannot read and write. No quality education, not even prepared. Education. Let's take a look at that. Education, health, job skills. You talking about crime? Crime equal economics. Hard work. I'm a retired Army veteran. Community advocate for over 20 plus years in the heart of the community. When have the last time each and every one of you been to the community? We have to do better. We need public service leaders is what we need. And unfortunately right now we don't have them. But hopefully I live long enough to be able to train up as a collective with other folks, the public service leaders that we need. It is a sad commentary that as I do a report card on each and every one of you, sad commentary as I do a report card, it doesn't look good. I'm in the communities. I've been in the community since I've been here, 2015. Every community I go to, I go straight there because that's my life. But again, pay raise, no.
That's
you want to
your time,
impress
sir.
someone, impress your constituent.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that concludes all the individuals that have signed up to speak this evening.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. That public hearing is now closed. Next item on the agenda is item 12B, developing a multi-county park with Fairfield County, authorizing the execution and delivery of an agreement governing the multi-county park, authorizing the inclusion of certain property located in Richland County in the multi-county park, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement and other related matters. That public hearing is now open. Madam Vice Chair, anyone signed up to speak?
No, Mr. Chair, no individual signed up this evening.
All right, that public hearing is now closed. Next item on the agenda is item 13, the approval of consent items. Item 13A, 22-023MA, applicant Gerald A. Lee. This is a request to change the zoning designation from residential single family medium density to residential multifamily medium density. Location Archie Drive, TMS number R17116-01-01. This is a second reading. I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. Newton.
thank you. I move to approve items 13A through K.
Second.
13A through what?
A.
Second.
All right. It's been properly seconded. Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
O'Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 13L. That is to direct the county administrator to look into what it would take to have Richland County CASA receive state funding to operate the way that all other CASA groups in the state do with state funding. Richland County should not be excluded from something that is provided to all other counties by the state. Author of the motion is Councilman Malinowski, dated for May 3rd, 2022. At this time, I'll entertain a motion. You recognize, I believe Ms. Tracy had her hand up and then Mr. Livingston.
Okay, thank you. So I did not have the benefit of being in this committee meeting, and so I would appreciate it if the maker of the motion would give us a little bit of information as to what his intentions were with this.
Malinowski, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Teresa and council members, this goes back to the fact we found out 45 out of the 46 counties in South Carolina are funded by state funds for this program. Richland County is the only one that is not funded. My understanding is that because Richland County had started this program prior to the other ones coming on board, when it came time to approve funds for the state to approve funds for this program in all counties, they approved it for all the other 45 counties, but said, well, Richland County, you're doing a good job. You go ahead and keep doing yours. That's my understanding of what happened. So my motion is for the administrator and his staff to consult with the CASA group and find out the information that the state is requesting that could possibly allow us to receive state funding to support our CASA group. That's all this is to give the administrator authority to go on a fact-finding mission and present it to the legislative body in the state. There is no motion here that will that is afoot to try and consider ending CASA, to defund them, to reduce their funds or anything. It's strictly to find out what the state is asking for so we can try to move forward and find out, can we receive state funding for our CASA group?
Tracy.
Thank you. And do we have, well, I guess, is the intention also to discover what every county receives from the state? So we're looking into what we are doing, but then also, well, I'll retract that. Never mind. Thank you.
Mr. Livingston and then Mr. Walker.
My concern is this is very different from what I thought came out of the committee. This is the original motion that was in the committee. And I remember it being changed in the committee. Nothing different from this. That's my concern is I don't think we have before us what really came out of the committee.
Councilman Walker, before I get to you, I believe the vice chair wanted to speak on what actually came out of the committee. So after the vice chair, then you, Councilman Walker. Madam Vice Chair.
And I'm going to speak, and if you feel the need to add in, Bill, please do. I think, Ms. Livingston, what you're referring to, the language that I recall using was a fiscal impact statement. Does that sound more accurate of what you remember? Yes. And so I do recall us talking about it, and the action of a document that was to move forward was the development of a fiscal impact statement. And that is what the administrator needed approval to move forward with.
Livingston. All right. Councilman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one point of clarification, I did receive some calls on this one from some guardian ad litem volunteers at CASA. So for clarification, I just want to put it on the record. This is not an attempt to have the state run our CASA program. This is simply a inquiry as to funding, correct?
Answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Anything additional? You recognize Ms. English.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Those are exactly my sentiments as well. Just wanted to make sure that we're on the record that this is just an inquiry. Thank you.
Recognize Mr. ACL.
Thank you. And just one more follow-up. How long is this process supposed to take to get this information?
Brown?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Ratio, this information was actually presented in the committee. So the committee received the information, and from there, I communicate to the committee. Now that had been done, that staff's actions were concluded. So if there were any additional steps that the administrator was being requested to take, I would need to know that from the committee. The committee, someone made a motion that said to move forward with the developing a fiscal impact statement, which is part of the process that it takes for the state consideration. So there's items that were presented there. So to your initial question, that's been done already. The fiscal impact statement has not been done because that has not been approved by this body to go forward with.
Okay. And if we do approve that, how long will that process take, I guess?
That I do not know. I have to find out all the components that they would want in that statement, but I don't have a timeline for that, Mr. Ratio. Thank you.
Ms. McBride.
Normally, this is the Richland County delegation issue, and they have all of the resources at hand in the General Assembly. So have we just discussed this with for fiscal accountability or statement with any members of the delegation rather than us rushing into doing something with it? And I know we're just right now trying to determine if it's possible to get additional funding or for CASA. But the question is, have we discussed this with Richland County delegation?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Recognize
in the packet, Ms. McBride, that we shared with the committee, and I think is also in the agenda right now, the director of CASA had been in conversations with Dr. Jana, who works with and represents the conduit for the delegation. So I do know that Director Roberts had asked some questions and asked for some assistance. To the extent that we're talking about from Richland County administration, we have not, because I have not been given such a directive by council to pursue that action.
My concern was this, it is a delegation issue in a way, and that if it goes to the General Assembly, the delegation would definitely be a part of it. I was just wondering about their interest and whether we should pursue a lot of work on it when it might be simplified going through them and to get input from them. That was just my concern. And how much work it's going to require of our staff to do this.
Yes, ma'am. I did mention in the committee that it would really be a four-pronged process. It would take council, it would take administration, it would take CASA, and it would take our lobbying efforts as well, which would include working with the delegation.
Final question.
Still recognize Ms. McBride.
With the other counties having CASA, who runs the program? Does the county run it or does the state run it?
Mr. Malinowski, to the best of my understanding, did a good job of communicating that Richland County was the premier. It was the author, and the other counties in the state were then part of the state's program when the state developed its program. So that program would be under the state's program, and Richland County would not be. So all other 45 counties would fall under the jurisdiction of the state's program, if you will, as running it by whoever is over that for the state, and is run by our director here locally.
Okay, because I know in some cases the state will provide the funding for the county to run. So I didn't know if that was the case in the other counties or not. But so you're saying that the state actually is running the program in the other counties?
It is a part of the state-run program, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize Mr. Wright.
And just to kind of piggyback on the administrator, yes, CASA existed before the state program. The state said, hey, this is a great program. So what they did is they modeled the state program after the Richland County CASA organization. So the 45 counties, and what they did at the time was allow Richland County to continue to run their own program because it was the gold standard, and it still is the gold standard, to be honest. So that's how it came that they made a statute that established the Guardian Ad Litem program for the state, but and it's run by the state. So it's not run by the individual counties, it's run by the state, but they have Guardian Ad Litems in the different counties for that purpose. So, but because it was the gold standard for not only the state, but really the nation, they allowed Richland County to continue to run the program.
Recognize Mr. Livingston.
Our CASA program received any state funds?
Mr. Chair, let me see if I have Mr. Dante Roberts, who is our local director of CASA, so we can make sure we get a definitive answer on it.
Roberts, you're recognized, and good evening to you.
I'm sorry, can you put your mic?
Director Roberts, you take your mask off, please, so we can hear you. You're a little
mic
muffled.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you. No, we do not receive any funding from the state. We are solely funded by Richland County and by our 501c.
So question is, I get some additional if we can. Or thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Just say, this item makes me a little nervous. I'm a little uncomfortable with it. It started with CASA coming before this body several months ago, seeking additional funding for some vacant attorney positions. And then from there, that request somehow morphed into what appeared, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but what appeared to be an existential threat to the agency, to where, if I'm in the director's shoes, I would probably think twice about coming back before this body to ask for any additional assistance if the response is going to be, well, let's we can figure out a way to get you funding from some other entity or perhaps see if the state could possibly take over the program. Now I'm hearing this evening that is not the aim for the state to take over Richland County CASA, but from what I've read and what's been shared with me, I don't think that there is this sort of happy medium where they remain a county agency while at the same time receiving state funding. The other piece of this is the delegation has not been engaged. CASA, as we all know, they're protected by the state statute. And so we're going to exert all of this energy to just see if they can get additional funding or to see what it would take for them to get additional funding. And we haven't even engaged the delegation. From my understanding, it would probably take a change in the statute. And that, again, there's no sort of sweet spot here. It's either they remain under the auspices of Richland County or they come under the auspices of the state, which would require the delegation to pursue a change in the statute in the General Assembly. So I'm not sure if we've actually thought about the impact of what would happen in the event that if CASA had to come under the state program. For what I've read, they would have to reapply for their jobs. Many of these are folks who have worked for Richland County CASA 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. And so if we go as far as for them to come under the state program, these are folks who have served the county for many of them over a decade who have to reapply for their jobs. So I think what we're contemplating here, could have some real world consequences for folks who have served the county for well over a decade. And also I would just share with my colleagues that Richland County CASA only comprises $1.7 million of the county's entire budget. I think our budget is $190 million and they're $1.7 million. They're barely a smidge of the entire county budget. And the service that they offer is to, what I would call our most important constituents, and that is our children, abused and neglected children. So again, I'm just very uncomfortable with this item, and I will be a no vote. You recognize Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Respectfully, I believe you're jumping to some conclusions here and doing somewhat of a bit of fear-mongering for individuals. This motion is merely to allow our administrator to begin conversation with the delegation, but prior to doing that, he needs to take some information to them. He just can't take them and buy them a cup of coffee and say, what do you think? He's got to provide some information. All this is a fact-finding mission. In the end, this council can decide what they want to do after we get all the facts from the legislative delegation, the administrator, the CASA group. And at that point, we make a decision what we want to do. There is no decision being made now. It's allowing the administrator to try and obtain facts for us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. You recognize Ms. Barron.
Mr. Chair. So I just, before we vote, I do want to be clear because I've heard two things tonight as to what the motion is. So if the motion as it is on our agenda is not what was stated by Vice Chair Mackey, and they're totally different. And so I don't know if we need to amend it to make sure that it's clear about what we want to do, because it's two different things, and it could impact my vote as such.
Thank you, Ms. Barron.
That was the question. So
who's in the position to answer the question for Councilwoman Barron?
Chairman Walker, may I
Recognize, Madam Clerk.
Yes. During the Administration Finance Committee meeting, this motion came up. It has been presented to the council as the motion that you have listed on the agenda. At that meeting, Councilman Malinowski made the motion, which you can see it on, he made the recommendation that goes with this motion that you can see on page 209 of your agenda. And on page 209, it gives it the directive of the county administrator to look into what it will take to have Richland County CASA receive state fundings to operate the way all other CASA groups in the state do. So the original motion is the one that is following the agenda. And his directive is attached to that motion, which you will see it on page 209.
Thank you, Madam.
I hope that clarifies.
It's under the notes, and the notes say the Administration and Finance Committee recommended to direct the county administrator to draft a fiscal impact statement, which is consistent with what I mentioned earlier. That was the motion that came out of the committee.
Recognize Ms. Barron.
So if that is the case, why is that not what's before us?
That is what is before you.
Oh. I mean, traditionally speaking, whatever we're voting on is what the item is listed as. Maybe I'm missing how we present information, but that's what's confusing me.
I think that may I be recognized, Chairman? Yes. I think for consistency to follow a motion, that motion is the one that follows one agenda after another agenda when it comes back again with the directive that is attached on the on your agenda packet.
Mr. Livingston?
Yeah, because of the confusion here, I would offer a substitute motion that would table this matter.
Second.
Properly second.
Motion.
The motion to table the matter.
Yeah.
You recognize
Ask a question.
Vice Chair.
And so just for clarification for all those listening, what does table the matter mean? What happens to the motion?
Your attorney can do that.
Basically to postpone it to a later date so we can get clarification, I'm assuming.
Can you state what has to happen before that, in order for that to come back before this body?
Well, generally, if you table it, it should be tabled for a specific date so it can be revisited.
A motion doesn't include a date.
Point of order.
Recognize Mr. Walker.
So I'm certainly not speaking for the parliamentarian. My understanding, what you're describing is a motion to defer. What we have before us and seconded is a motion to table, which is an indefinite suspension of the motion until such time as council sees fit to bring it back before the body.
That's correct.
I want to make sure I'm understanding what I just seconded now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Seconded. Debatable. So Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski? Hugh?
Oh.
McBride?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Teratio?
Yes.
Joe Walker?
Yes.
Barron?
Yes.
O'Walker?
Yes.
Mackey?
No.
English?
Yes.
Newton? Motion approved.
Item on the agenda is item 14, third reading items. Item 14A, 22-006 MA. The applicant is Jared Munike. This is a request to change the zoning designation from general commercial, light industrial, rural, and residential multifamily high density to residential multifamily high density. Location is the end of Idlewild Boulevard and Barn Street. TMS numbers are 1111-1-01-0254 and 55, R11-114-01-02 and 13. Entertain a motion for approval.
Chair, I move to approve, but before, I would just like to add a comment.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Okay, it's been moved to properly second. Discussion, Madam, Ms. English, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. But I would just like to thank Mayor Bob Coble and Attorney Ron Scott for just working through this with all differences. They have been amicably discussing these matters, and I'm just extremely proud of the way you guys handled this. And I want to say thank you for just working with me and just making sure that all parties are satisfied. So thank you very much.
Ms. English, additional discussion? No questions. There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
O'Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
I am recusing myself due to my parent company representing the applicant.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 14B. Developing a multi-county park with Fairfield County, authorizing the execution and delivery of an agreement governing the multi-county park, authorizing the inclusion of certain property located in Richland County in the multi-county park, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement and other related matters. I entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Move to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Madam Clerk, I'm recusing myself as per the written recusal statement submitted prior to this meeting.
Barron. O'Walker.
Yes.
Yeah. Mackey.
I'm recusing myself due to my parent company representing the company involved.
English.
Yes.
Newton. Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 14C. This is an ordinance amending the Richland County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, County Council, Section 2-14, Compensation of Council Members, so as to reflect the new annual salary for County Council. I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? Mr. Malinowski, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we make the figures reflect a 4% raise for county council to keep it up with the times that everyone else is getting.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? All right. There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote on the substitute motion.
Malinowski. Pugh.
No.
McBride.
No.
Livingston.
No.
Teratio.
No.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
No.
O'Walker.
No.
Mackey.
No.
English.
No.
Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
Back to the original motion. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, it was already moved in proper second. We're back to the main.
Yes, yes, yeah, back to the main. Thank you. I have you so closely to me. All right, any discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
No.
Barron.
Yes.
O'Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
No.
Approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 16, report of the Economic Development Committee. That'll be provided by the Honorable Paul Livingston. Mr. Livingston, you're recognized.
Item 16A, committing to negotiate a fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes agreement between Richland County, Project Wellness, identifying the project and other matters there related. The committee's recommendation is for approval.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
O'Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Got the floor, Mr. Livingston.
And that brings us to item 16B, authorize execution and delivery of fee in lieu ad valorem taxes and incentive agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and Project Weldon to provide for the payment of fee in lieu of taxes. The committee's recommendations for approval.
Heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Racio?
Thank you. I missed my chance on 16A, but I wonder if the chair of the Economic Development Committee could give us a little bit more information about this project, as much as we can offer to the public at this time.
On page 55, that information is there, and I'll also refer to our Economic Development Director.
Director Rubel?
Yes, sir. This project is an expansion of an existing industry. It represents I think it was a $94 million, doing this off memory, I apologize. It is 94 new jobs, averaging $33 an hour, and an $81 million expansion. And it's an existing industry located in Northeast Richland County.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Racio?
So much. Yep.
All right. Livingston?
Okay, for approval.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of the committee. Any additional discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote. That's with respect to item, I believe that is 16B.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron. O'Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Darrell Livingston, does that conclude?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 17, report of the Rules and Appointments Committee. That will be provided by the Honorable Gretchen Barron. Ms. Barron, you recognize, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Rules and Appointment Committee has a couple of appointments. The first one is for 17A1, Central Midlands Council of Government Board, and the committee is recommending Susan Brill, which is A.
Heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, let's take the vote.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Yes.
Barron. O'Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton. Motion approved.
You have the floor, Ms. Barron.
For 17-2, the Airport Commission, the committee is recommending the incumbent, which is D. Michael Kelly.
Heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
O'Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Have the floor, Ms. Barron.
In respect to 17-3, Board of Zoning Appeals, the committee is recommending D. David Fuller, and C. David Fuller, and D, and to, out of respect for the candidate's name, I'm just going to say S. Hendricks.
Heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize Ms.
Thank you. That discussion period passed so quickly. I didn't get to ask a quick question. So since we're only appointing for 2 of the 6, we are re-advertising effective now or effective at some other advertising period?
So thank you. That was my next statement. And so my next statement will be that we are re-advertising as we are re-advertisement. We have an advertisement going on as we speak that is due. Applications are due November the 18th.
Thank you.
Aaron, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So the next item is the review of our comprehensive council rules. We submitted it to each council member once again for you all to take a look at them, make your modifications, revisions, and get them back to the clerk's office. We did hear back from Ms. Newton. And so with that and those recommendations, the committee is recommending for approval of the comprehensive rules, taking into consideration Ms. Newton's edits.
I apologize thank you for not sending those recommendations to full council. I sent them to the Rules and Appointments Committee. So if I may just verbalize for council what my one small change was, specifically on page 311 of our agenda, item 518, regarding voting for board and committee appointments. The language as written says, that when we are voting to elect 1 or more persons for a board, et cetera, it says ballot elections should be used. And I move that we replace that word should with may, that ballot elections may be used to accommodate the way that we just happen to vote for the board, but allow us the option to do otherwise. So that would be my motion.
Second.
Please second. Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
No.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
The floor.
Thank you. And before we move to our final item, I just want to say, as a part of this committee, that seeing the document and how long it's been in that particular committee, it is an exciting time to note that these changes have been made and now we can move forward with implementing them. And so our last and final item is from our committee is to make a recommendation to draft a job description for the internal auditor position and advertise for the position, then hire an internal auditor. And then upon that time, we would like to send all of these items to our evaluation and oversight ad hoc committee to lead the endeavor.
Further recommendation of the committee. Any discussion or questions? There being none. Oh, I'm sorry. You recognize Mr. Racio.
Thank you. I guess, is this unusual for rules and appointment to draft a job description? Has that ever happened before?
Yeah.
That's not what recommendation. The recommendation is to send it to this committee to allow them to take the lead on this, on drafting the job description, and then moving forward the hiring process and so forth, as we do with some of our employees like the administrator, the clerk, the attorney.
Okay, got it. Just the way it was written. Yeah, got me a little backwards. Okay, thank you.
All right. Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Teratio.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Been approved.
That concludes your report, Ms. Barron.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 18, the report of the Community Impact Grants Committee. That report will be provided by the Honorable Cheryl English. Councilwoman English, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Community Impact Grant Committee met on 18th, and the committee recommended using the same parameters and metrics used to award the fiscal year 2023 discretionary grants during the budget cycle. And a copy of those guidelines and process and recommendation for the timeline is located on pages 322 and 328 of our agenda. And one of the things, after consideration and conversation with committee members relative to the timing of these awards and getting the funds into the hands of the community as early as possible before heading into the next calendar year, we would like to recommend that we modify the proposed schedule to open the grant application period tomorrow, which is November 2nd, and close the grant application period on Wednesday, November 23rd. This would give the committee then time to review and make recommendations to the full council, and no longer than by December 13th council meeting. And this would enable the committee to work on these issues to be completed prior to the year end, while also allowing recipients to be aware of their funding and able to use the final 6 months and able to kind of get their projects completed or done. And so with that, I would like to make a motion that we move to approve, that we move the proposed process for the award of the $300,000 in community impact grants with the changes of the timeline to open the grant application tomorrow and close the application period on November 23rd.
That is the recommendation of the committee, Ms. English.
Yes, sir.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion or questions? You're recognized, Mr. Malinowski.
So the only change we have in the schedule is the period closes November 23rd. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Newton.
Go ahead, Ms. Newton.
All right, Ms. Newton, then Ms. McBride.
Sorry, first a tactical question and then a few other questions. So I thought that there were two changes, and that the first was that it actually opened tomorrow, or was it always opening tomorrow?
No, it's tomorrow.
Okay. So opens tomorrow and closes on the 23rd. Two other questions, and one I forgot to ask, sorry. So after the committee makes its recommendations, do those come back before council, or are the votes of the committee final?
The council.
Okay. Thank you. And then I have some questions about the application process that I'll just share with you later. My understanding is that we wanted to make this application process consistent with what we asked other people. But as we look at future applications for the community grants, I would like to see us look at how some of those things align with our strategic plan, and some additional questions that I can share later. But thank you.
And that is correct. One of the things is the timing, and that's why we want to use the proposed schedule that's already out there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Brad and Mr. Malinowski.
I agree with the last statement that Ms. Newman made. I guess my major concern is that it's not ample time. And I said this before when we did the opera funds. I just don't think we have enough time for the nonprofits to submit an application within such a short time and to announce it and get it back. In addition, I think that managing programmatically for staff to try and review all the grants, in addition to the current grants being reviewed, it just does not provide adequate time for staff. I also am concerned about the grantees that are coming in. If they are funded by November, if they are funded by January, then they have less than 6 months to implement the grant. The third issue I have is that even though some of these programs may not fit with ARPA programs, some of them may. I find that that if we're going to meet the needs of the community, we've put about $16 million or more through ARPA funds. We need to find out where there are missing areas that are not being served. I think that at this time, I would not recommend doing the discretionary grant and start it in the next fiscal year when we know where all of the funds are going and we can look at the weak areas. Unfortunately, when you use discretionary grants, then oftentimes small, private, nonprofit organizations are not able to serve the communities that are in need because it is competitive. And I have concerns with it being, I'm for transparency, but I have concerns with being competitive. And therefore, those underserved communities that need the programs are not able to get the programs. If we would wait till after we get the ARPA programs in and see the areas where they're being funded, then we can do some strategic planning for funding. I feel I'm concerned about the geographical equity in programs right now. We don't know where these funds are going. So at this point, I just cannot support continuing the funding right now in I think it's a very rushed manner. Thank you.
Ms. McBride, before I go to Mr. Malinowski, you used the word recommend. So do I take that to mean a motion or you're just expressing your sentiments?
Yes, I'll change it to a motion.
That is a motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
even though I know most people don't agree with me on it, but that's okay too. So I move to delay the funding of the discretionary programs until the upcoming fiscal year in May. Thank you.
Motion, is there a second? It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Mr. Malinowski, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I had two questions. One was this, what we're looking at in front of us on page 321. It tells us what the committee's recommendation was. But then Councilwoman English changed the date in there. So is that a separate motion by Councilwoman English? Because the committee's recommendation didn't have that date.
Recognized.
Yes, Mr. Malinowski, after speaking with staff and ensuring that they would be able to have appropriate time and be able to get all these recommendations to us, it was recommended that they would be able to open it by as early as tomorrow to make sure that they had the time to get it in.
Right, but you're making a separate motion then because what's in front of us is what would have come out of that committee.
Yes, sir. My apologies. Yes, sir.
Okay. And secondly, you made the statement about an additional $300,000. I thought we already had previously approved $300,000 for this particular program. If that's the case, is that where we are? Or are you talking an additional $300,000?
No, it's just that it was already.
It's the original $300,000.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No discussion? No questions? Madam Clerk, take the vote, please. We're voting on Ms. McBride's motion, and Ms. McBride, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your motion is to defer the funding, for any of these community impact, grant organizations, if you will, until the new year.
To the new year.
To the new fiscal year. So that would be, new fiscal year, which would start in, July of 2023. That's the motion that's on the floor. All right, any additional questions or discussion? You recognize Ms. Barron?
I apologize, but when you restated it, it did trigger something. So are those the funds that we currently have allocated, will those funds carry over to the upcoming fiscal year? Meaning that we would have whatever we budget for in the FY24 budget, what year is it? 23. Those funds won't carry over.
Right, so you just basically wouldn't spend the funds, and then if you wanted to allocate an amount above that amount, you could, but it would not be just a carryover. To answer your question.
Oh, so in essence, it's just going back into the general fund.
Correct.
Recognized, Ms. McBride.
But we could make a motion like we often do to carry those funds over to the next year in our motion period to allocate the 300,000 back.
Correct.
Thank you.
You have the floor, Ms. Bear.
Thank you. So in that motion of carrying it over, then in essence, what we're doing is just merely, not necessarily technically carrying it over, but increasing the amount that we are set aside, that we have now set aside for discretionary grants.
That assumes things that the council might do next year. So if the council, right, so you.
It's an assumption.
Correct.
This is all hypothetical.
Right. So in your hypothetical scenario, then you would be doing that in hypothetically, but since the council hasn't taken the action to say so, then technically right now we can't say that this motion would result in that happening.
Okay. I understand that, but I'm just trying to get clarity on as to what that would look like. Because what I would not like to see is, these funds go now to Abyss or to the general fund. So I'll take an opportunity to say this statement, just like the funds that were set aside for our raises already, that there are not any increases, it already exists, right? It's the same thing, correct? It's okay, don't answer.
I need to make this statement because
Recognize Ms. McBride.
Thank you. Because the intention is that the funds will be there because we would not have expended those funds. So they will be there. Just like it is the intention that we're going to have applicants coming in applying for this money and that all the money will be spent. All those are projections and intentions.
Recognize Ms.
I don't want to go round and robin, but that's what makes me, that's what concerns me. Because if we have an opportunity and something happens where we need that $300,000 and we know that we have that $300,000. I know in my house, if I got some for something money and I need to go to it, I'm going to use it. So that's where I'm kind of torn, is that we know what we can do, but we know that, it's not anything concrete because we haven't gotten to the budget year. And so I would just like to encourage my colleagues to note that if this is something that we decide to do, that we keep in the forefront of our head that although that we have $300,000 that maybe we have not spent, that we note that that is for something.
Ms. Newton and then Ms. Mackey.
Thank you. So just a quick clarification for the committee recommendation. So it says here that the grant period is from January to June 30th, 2023. So the way that I'm reading this is that if these funds are approved, an entirely new grant cycle would also start for award at our next fiscal year. So there would be funds now through June, and then again, starting our next fiscal year, presuming that council voted for it, there would be another round of community impact grants. Is that impression correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's taken into what I've heard my colleagues say, and going back a few months when we were going through the budget process as the original maker of the motion to allocate allocate $300,000 to the Community Impact Grant Committee. This is something that we've stated to communities. This is what we've stated to nonprofits. Many of them have been waiting, just like they knew that we were working on ARPA funds and we were going to have this grant process open. They were waiting for that. They've been waiting for this. And I do recognize Ms. McBride's concern regarding time frame. I realize that, but I also think we need to make it available for the organizations that want to participate. If we have it, we made the decision during the budget. I think we should move forward with that and allow those the opportunity that have been waiting for us to do what we said we were going to do to follow through. And when we get to the next budget cycle, we can then again reevaluate, be strategic, and plan through this committee like we all agreed we were going to do, and develop a plan and an amount that fits the needs of the community based off of, we'll have data back from ARPA, we'll have data from what we've done with the Community Impact Grant Committee, as well as any organizations funded through the discretionary grant committee. So I do think we should still move forward with making those funds available to the community, just like we've done in the budget process with ARPA.
Yes, Ms. McBride,
Thank you.
you're recognized.
I don't think there's anyone on this council that's more of an advocate for community programs than I am. So let me make that clear. I push for community programs more so probably than anybody on this council. So that I want to make sure to the community and the constituents that are out there. I just want to make sure that we're not rushing and misusing or not using the county's money in the most efficient way possible. And I also want to make sure that those underserved communities would have the opportunity to be served, given that the discretionary process and the grant writing process is not always the most easy process. So that's, but I do support community programs and will always support community programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Any additional questions or discussion on Ms. McBride's motion? All right. There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Oh.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
No.
Teratio,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Aaron.
No.
Walker,
No.
Mackey,
No.
English,
No.
Newton. Motion fails.
Back to the original motion. Any additional discussion on the original motion? Ms. Newton, you're recognized.
Yes. I just wanted to clarify, since it was pointed out that the motion that Ms. English made was slightly different from the motion that came out of the committee. Do we need a new motion and a second for that with the amended timeframe?
Sure. So, Ms. English, will you make your motion again?
I would move that the process of awarding the 300,000, the community grants impact, with the changes to the timeline, and the grant application open tomorrow and close the application period on November the 23rd.
Second.
Properly second. Questions? Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski, Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Aaron,
Yes.
Walker, Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Approved.
Next item on the
Mr. Chair, we have move
recognize
for
Ms.
reconsideration,
Ms.
please. Move for reconsideration.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Key,
Oh.
No.
Livingston,
No.
Teratio,
No.
Joe Walker,
No.
Barron, Walker,
No.
Mackey,
No.
English,
No.
Newton.
No.
Motion
Madam
fails.
Clerk, there was a reconsideration. I was a yes for that, please. Thank you.
I have to say, welcome back.
Duly noted, Mr. Malinowski. Duly noted. Next item
That
on.
concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. English. Next item on the agenda is item 19 as other items. 19A, a resolution to appoint and commission Michael Brent Davis as a code enforcement officer for the proper security, general welfare, and convenience of Richland County. I entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 20, executive session. We don't have any items for executive session this evening. Next item on the agenda is 21, motion period. There are no motions. Next item is item 22, adjournment. Entertain a
Move to
motion.
Adjourn.
Second.
Been moved to properly second. That matter is non-debatable. Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
You are adjourned.